A lot of contributions to the stuff that we take for granted today. Cell phone technology was developed by amateur radio operators, as was FM radio, television, and a lot of digital modes. Most people don't know that.
Lima, Kilo Lima.
Today we're at Hunt Fountain Park operating what we call Field Day. And Field Day is an event where during a 24-hour period we try to make as many contacts as we can with other amateur radio stations in the country and Canada. We will even talk what we call DX, distance communications, and of course we try to get as many points as we can for that.
Field Day, Kilo 4 Lima, Kilo Lima, Kilo 4 Lima, Kilo Lima.
But we plan to use amateur radio for our community emergency response teams. If they have impacts after a storm or after a disaster, they're able to communicate back to the Emergency Operations Center, let us know what's going on in their community. When we communicate with them, let them know that what we can do to help and really get some assessments back right away after a storm.
On Field Day, we try to gain as many points as we can within a 24-hour period. And one way we get 100 bonus points is with a QRP or low power setup like we have right here. We only use 5 watts and get 5 contacts. And we did that from the West Coast to the East Coast in just a very short period of time using CW. We use a keyer, which we send Morse code with. We call it CW for continuous wave. And the purpose of this is to get 5 contacts within a short period of time for 100 extra points. This is a transceiver. It's a Yaesu brand transceiver, and it is what we call QRP rig, which means it's low power. We got our points using only 5 watts with this little rig right here. We have a pair of solar panels which basically charge the 12-volt battery. This 12-volt battery runs our radio.
Charlie Buck, West Central Florida. 4 Alpha, West Central Florida. QFO?
It's a really cool hobby because there's the camaraderie. I usually stick on more local radio band, run what's called a net, which is similar to kind of a meeting or a round table on the radio. You can talk and get information back and forth. It's a really helpful thing actually because they use nets in emergency situations. So they can get information from shelters, from people surveying damage, and various other things that are critical to get emergency management as good as it can in the event of like a hurricane, a tornado, anything like that.
This is a logging program, and it records the station that you worked or talked to, the time, who the operator is, and the mode, whether it's voice or code, or we will compile that, and that will give us our score to submit. Ham radio was one of the first social networks. It started by amateurs relaying messages all across the country to each other in greetings for birthdays and stuff like that. In the early days, they had to use Morse code, the blip, 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 blip. You hear that probably in the background, maybe. But today, That's no longer a requirement to get a license, but you must take a test, a simple test to get a license to operate. And we give those tests every month at the Lakeland Amateur Radio Club.
A group of hikers in the Green Swamp, it was actually in Pasco County, but they were in the Green Swamp, got lost. And one of those folks was an amateur radio operator, so they were able to communicate over those amateur radio frequencies on a repeater. And someone at home or wherever they were heard their call for help and was able to relay information to the Pasco County Sheriff's Office and help them find where they were, and law enforcement coordinated through that person, and they were actually able to go out and find those folks. They were out in the woods, they had no idea where they were, and it was dark by the time the Sheriff's Office got them out. There was no cellular service where they were, so cell phones work in most places, and if they work, then certainly you could call. But again, after a disaster, cell phone service, many other parts of infrastructure are going to be overloaded. They may not have power. We saw that here in 2004 when cellular sites didn't have a generator, or they did have a backup battery, but after several days of no commercial power, those sites went down. So communication should be part of your family disaster plan. Everybody should have an emergency plan based on your family. What are you going to do? What do you need to do? Everybody's family and home situation is different.
Yeah, this event happens usually the last weekend in June, and today we're going to have anywhere from 40 to 60 members and visitors from the area here in Central Florida. Across the nation, there's approximately 35,000 amateur radio operators during this event, all across the country, again, like in Canada and the United States. And you can go to two websites to find out more information on it. You can go to arrl.org, which stands for American Radio Relay League. You can also go to the Lakeland Amateur Radio Club site, which is lakelandarc.org.
This is Godzilla's hairdryer, I think.